Our final speaker for today is Ivon Arroyo, who is an associate professor here in the Manning College of Information and Computer Sciences at UMass, but also is on the faculty in the College of Education here at UMass Amherst. She has a joint appointment between us. She specializes in learning sciences, computer science, and education/cognitive psychology with a focus on math learning. Andrew mentioned that as an area people are interested around here, and assessment for K-12 students. Previously, she was an associate professor of social science and policy studies at Worcester Polytech Institute, WPI, just down the road a bit. She holds a bachelor's in computer science from the Universidad Blas Pascal in Argentina, and I probably totally ruined the pronunciation.
That's perfect.
Oh, that, okay, language. Sometimes I can get it right. And an MS in computer science and a doctorate in education in math and science education from UMass Amherst. Today, she is going to talk to us about a bilingual mathematics intelligent tutoring system for Latinx students. So language is a theme here. She's going to do two of them. So she's excelling beyond everything else. And learning. It's about learning.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Do you want to use the mic?
Yes, where is it? Thank you for inviting me. And I say, you know, my research is a little different, but James keeps saying that all the research is different. So, but yeah, so I'm associate professor both here in the Manning College of Information and Computer Sciences and the College of Education. And this is joint work that we're doing across colleges. And it started a long time ago, but it keeps evolving and changing. So what's my motivation? Our diversity as a nation. 22% of residents in the United States speak a language other than English at home. And Latinos or Latinx, that is the term of people who have a Hispanic origin, are the largest minority in the country, 65 million, and has quadrupled since the 80s and continues to grow. Latinx are highly underrepresented in the STEM workforce and constitute only 8% of STEM workers. And particularly students who migrate into the United States and speak a language other than English at home are placed into educational settings in which generally, you know, it doesn't happen in all schools, but it's common that they will be placed in educational settings in which they are providing instruction in English under a deficit-oriented approach. And what's important is mathematics teachers are underprepared to teach math content and language at the same time and are typically signaling with their students, trying to reach them. So the question is, what does it mean in terms of learning technologies to make them equitable, right? And so if we just think of English learning technologies for English only, which is the typical thing, I think that's a missed opportunity for educating citizens in the United States. And of course, that we want a smooth transition for immigrants that arrive into the United States. And I'm talking more than translation, because translation is kind of a simplistic term. It's not just a matter of swapping. And a lot of curricula in the United States, they have the Spanish version or the English version. And generally, it's kind of one snapshot. It's kind of a check to say we have it, right? But we're talking more about really localizing this intelligent tutoring systems, or also called cognitive tutors, that are popular in the United States. And why are they called intelligent tutoring system? Because they can personalize material. They can help students fill gaps wherever they are by changing the content in the trajectories of what they are learning. And they also can support lately not only students from a cognitive dimension, but also from an affective dimension. If they're getting really frustrated, an intelligent tutoring system should be able to realize about that and do something about it. So really mimicking a lot of a good tutor. Another feature is accessibility, right? So they have the possibility of really becoming accessible to students because they're digital, and it's really mimics a good tutor, a good teacher, multiplexed to every student in the class. And also the fact that they are available over the web in general, that allows them to be scalable. But important, I think that equitable learning technologies should really respect student identities. And that is really represented within the STEM material that we present and how we present it, including these digital characters that you're going to see here and there inside of the math screen intelligent tutoring system. That is what our test bed here. That little character is called Jane, and she has been in the software for a long time. And this math screen intelligent tutoring system is online, freely available. There's a teacher over there using it in the school here in Massachusetts, and it's called Math Screen because each area of math is represented with a plant, and as students continue to exert effort and master the topics, the plant continues to grow and gives bloom. So it has this game-like feature. So the math garden importantly grows with effort. So if students start slacking around, they start gaming and quicking, rushing through, they will start wilting, right? So it's multimedia also is very important because there's a lot of research that says that audio is important in reaching the brain through many different channels. So having audio is really important. Personalized instruction, meaning sometimes you have to cross boundaries across grades. Even if a student is in 6th grade, you have to fall back to 5th grade material, 4th grade or 3rd grade, and that has to be done seamlessly. Affective tutoring, those little characters are empathic in the sense that when they realize the student is frustrated or lacks confidence, they start talking to them and trying to build their confidence and helping them to resolve episodes of frustration. And last, they also train growth mindset, which is, it's a construct that has been studied in psychology quite a bit that suggests that when people think that their brains are malleable and that the intelligence is not a fixed trait, that then you can persevere with effort through obstacles. So what we know about Math Spring is that in the United States, it has yielded to increased math learning in a variety of important tests against control groups, and that it has yielded improved math attitudes and emotions after being used. A lot of it is because of the characters. So right now we're working with 80 teachers in Massachusetts, measuring its efficacy at a larger scale. So we were talking about intelligent tutoring, and I wanted to say a little bit about this, right? So this is a sequence for one individual student seeing from a problem 0 to a problem 11. And there's a lot of things that are happening here. And there's a lot of things that are changing. So what the system sees and observes as evidence are all these different behaviors that students are having. SOF means solve correctly in the first attempt. Give up means that the student starts working and eventually decides to move on to another question. ATT means I attempted, I made a mistake, but later I solved it, and there's other possible behaviors. But here you can see the black line is difficulty. And even though this is 6th grade problems, and 6th grade is around, it's about 0.6, but still even small oscillations in there mean a change in difficulty. When a student continued to succeed, it increased the difficulty of the problem. In problem 7, the students struggle. I mean, they tried to really hard, managed to solve correctly, and then it maintained that level of difficulty, and then the student didn't do so well, so it decreased the level of difficulty, and then it tried again to increase. So it's playing with this difficulty level, and at the same time estimating, it's Bayesian, or my method, it's kind of old style, but it's Bayesian estimation of problem difficulty. No neural networks, but the idea is that the student's mastery continues to increase, and when it reaches a point, it decides to switch to another unit of knowledge. You can see here, there's a lot more kinds of behaviors and different actions that are happening, from hints, as solved after hints. So there's a lot of activity here and lots of different kinds of interactions. Here, the students are quick guessing, going really fast. So the models really are trying to observe all of this behavior and make sense of what's going on and estimate, increase or decrease the estimation of knowledge and change the problem difficulty. So this is what we know about Math Spring. It's effective. It also has a teacher portal to help teachers set assignments and to see reports about how that master is looking for the different students. And this has been well received by teachers. And we think it's really making a difference here, right? But the question is, what is it when we're talking about Spanish-speaking or Latin immigrants, or even in other countries where English is not spoken? What does it mean to localize the software that is created here into, and not just transplant it, but really localize it? And is that localized software still effective at math teaching and learning? And does it still have a positive effective impact, right? We just got a TEED award that is also trying to understand here in the United States, just for Latin American immigrants, is it making a difference if we localize it? And how do we create diverse avatars in math screens so that they look and talk more like people who are Latinx? So, lots of challenges in the localization, just difference in notation, differences in curriculum. If you try to take a software into a different country, for instance, in South America, which was a case study that we did some years ago. So the metric systems are different, the notation is different. And imagine just what that means for an immigrant student who's arriving into the United States, right? And with not only a different language, but a completely different notation in mathematics, right? So we did a case study. We translated the software after, not just translated again, we really localized it with the accents of the area. We changed the curriculum a little bit. We also made the character talk in the local accent. And we went to 3 different schools in Argentina, and we tried it over there. We didn't measure only the mathematics ability, and we measured them at a pre-test time and then at the end at a post-test time. But we also gave students these affective measures that have to do with grit. Grit is perseverance and passion for long-term goals. It's it's an affective construct. There's an instrument to assess it. It's well known by now in the scientific world that measures students' ability to understand their perseverance after they face obstacles and their passion for longer-term goals. And also we measure by literacy, and I'm going to explain that in a little bit. So what we did was we allowed students to use the system for 5 sessions in schools that were fully Spanish, and we gave them a pre-test and then a post-test. So what we saw was, after this 5 weeks of use, that students improved in their mathematics problem solving with a reasonable effect size. But of course, this wasn't a controlled study. What we know is that the time students spend more time in certain topics, and in those topics, they improve most. That's something that we know. Another thing is the impact on grit, as I said, that it significantly improved. This was something that surprised us. It was a little bit of a test for ourselves to see, because generally this is something very stable, something that is not expected to change that much, but we managed to, there was no curriculum in the school either that was targeting grit in particular, right? So students improved in their grit from the beginning to the end of the study. The other thing that we measured was English as a second language. A subset, one of the 3 schools was a dual language school where they learned English in the afternoon. So they used mastering in Spanish in the morning, and they used mastering in English in the afternoon. And we asked them some very specific questions. There were questions at the intersection of English and mathematics. We didn't ask them to solve individual problems, but we asked them to explain what the problem was asking and how would they go about to solve it. So we were not coding for their mathematics, we just coded their English. So these were open-ended questions, and we coded them manually, qualitatively. So what do we see? Students improved in their reading comprehension in 2 mathematics questions, and in their listening comprehension. We also have them here, mathematics questions, and then answer those 2 questions about what the problem was about. And students improved significantly from the first day to the last day. This was kind of a pilot. We didn't know what was going to come up. It was very exploratory, but we were very pleased and surprised, right? that students improved in their language after learning math in a different language. So what were our conclusions from this study? Students improved in their mathematics proficiency, suggesting that localizing a software to a different country could work. Students who used the program in Spanish, which we translated to Cultivando Matemáticas, improved in their grit, their perseverance, and passion for long-term goals. And students who used MathSpring in English improved their language comprehension. And so it seems that it was effective. Being able to localize a software to a different culture serves not only as a math learning tool, but a second language education tool. So what do we do here in the United States? We added features inside of MathSpring so that students can switch between languages. They can go between English and Spanish towards a dual language MathSpring with a choice of language. And why do we do this? Because the profile of students who are Latinx here is very different to a person who lives in South America. The idea is that we're creating a dual language, a bilingual tutoring system where students have the ability to really go back and forth between different linguistic repertoires, right? And we just finished a pilot at the Boys and Girls Club in Holyoke now during April 23 that has a high Latino population where they could have bilingual mathematics problems and a language of choice, and they could change it back and forth, and also bilingual learning companions. And students can choose how they speak. And we have the characters talking North American Spanish and particularly with a Puerto Rican accent. And students use MathSpring to practice for MCAS. We have just finished that study, so I can't present data. But what I can say is that this character closer represents the experience of emergent bilingual students in the US, right? So where students can use and see that a character has a full linguistic repertoire instead of two monolinguals. So here's Isabel talking in English. Okay, that's it. So there you go. Okay, so yes, the character speaks in the two languages. And just to give you an idea, here it's kind of a mock-up of what we did. There's a button that says Próximo Problema, which is in Spanish. And if they click in Próximo Problema, the next problem is in Spanish. If they click on next problem, the next problem is in English, right? So they can go back and forth. Still, it's the same curriculum, and the system behind the scenes is functioning the way that it would normally do. And now what we're trying to understand is how do students perform in one language versus the other when they go back and forth. What kinds of characters do they choose and why? What do they believe about them? So this is the study that we have just finished. And what we're trying to do now is work towards improving an NSF grant proposal that tries to understand what is the impact of bilingual, multilingual math tutoring systems localized to Central and Latin North American Spanish to support multilingual learners. And in particular, we're very interested in this idea of thinking of tutoring systems that don't have a single goal, which is teaching math, but pursuing a dual goal of teaching both mathematics and biliteracy. So they have a dual teaching goal where somebody could choose what kind of language do I want to learn or lean towards and say, okay, I really want to go towards that language. And the other thing is extending some results from one of our authors, which is also designing characters with the students in Holyoke, co-designing as a participatory design process to understand what are characters that result from co-designing with students, right? We have also already a dissertation from one of the people in our group, Daniela Alessio, who's here in the call, I believe. And you know, what we have found so far is that students design characters that look like them because they really want somebody to talk to that identifies them and is like them. So my conclusion is that there's huge potential for smart learning technologies to bridge knowledge gaps in math and STEM but also personalized individual needs and reach students from varied cultural backgrounds and linguistic repertoires. Thank you.
Some time for questions. Oh, it was a question right up front.
So yeah. I did not know that there was a grid scale, and I find that so interesting. I've heard, podcasts about it. So can you go back to slide 19? This is more clarification.
Yeah, I realized that was in Spanish, right?
When you mentioned grid, I thought that it was going to be more of a dependent variable, or sorry, like an independent variable. But it seems like you found that people who use the system improved
in grid, and there's some studies about growth, the interaction between growth mindset and grit. The idea that by training students in growth mindset, in the idea that there's not a math gene and that intelligence is malleable as opposed to fixed, and that making mistakes is part of learning, and that it's positive to make mistakes, and all of these messages, there's a set of messages. Our character has about 60 different messages that it delivers in different situations. Particularly in situations where they make mistakes, right? So we believe that is what is making the change, right? But generally, there has been a discussion of grit about whether it's a trait, is it not a trait? So some people said, well, that's a personality trait. So about, being a fighter, let's say, right?
Yeah, I haven't thought much about what grit is and whether it's, but I could believe that it's not necessarily a personality trait, but I would have thought that it's something that takes more time to move on. Do you have a sense, I guess, for how long? Like what was
I guess, first of all, it was a small improvement. This is, can't remember the higher value, but I think it's 5. And if you see the mean difference is very small, but the variation was very small, right? So we were surprised too, but I don't know how long it lasts. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe it will drop again after not using it, and that would be a great thing to analyze. How long does it last? Does the effect last? But I think that this votes for growth mindset and this kinds of interventions being positive in general. Just tutoring systems are great tools for testing educational interventions, right? Because you're giving everybody the same treatment, right?
Are improvements on grid something that people in cognitive course usually look to?
So it's completely typical, right? Yeah, I don't know of any studies. Yeah.
Hey, wonderful presentation. I was just curious, is there any possibility of applying this model maybe to other elementary subjects? I understand math is a great option, but is there a way to kind of expand to other subjects?
Definitely. I think that a lot of especially the affective component and the avatars that are affective definitely can be applied to other areas. I know in the AI community, definitely there's avatars that talk to students in biology systems. And yes, more in the sciences. But, not necessarily they train growth mindset. They might be empathic, but, I don't know to what extent they might train growth mindset. This is something that is specific to our research. I haven't, yeah. Definitely there's potential for other subjects, yeah.
Other question from on.
Thank you. This is fantastic. There's a slide that you have that had all of the sort of log data, is what I'm thinking of it as. And
it is the log data, and
we
found some way finally to represent it in some visual way.
Well, I love the way you represented it. It was very easy to understand. Have you guys done any kind of analysis to see, like, I can imagine maybe there's certain, because we're interested in pathways, certain, paths or trajectories or sequences of actions that are more successful or less successful. Have you guys looked at that at all?
What we've looked at is all sorts of models that predict future performance and that predict, for instance, what's going to happen in the next problem. Right. So what we have been doing lately is working with computer vision. That's an extra channel, let's say, but it doesn't need to be there, but it definitely helps. I can tell you that just being able to look at the student's face, and we have a whole line of research there with Beverly Wolf and Marguerite Betke, and who's an expert in computer vision at BU. And what we know is we've created models to predict the next with quite some accuracy. The problem is that having computer vision is always a little impractical, right, compared to just using it plain. But we've been able to predict with a high level of accuracy the effort of the next problem. And also, we've been working on trying to understand what is it that we can predict about this current problem in the first 5 seconds. So just looking at the student and seeing the first 5 seconds, what is it, with what level of accuracy can we predict? 10 seconds, 25 seconds, so that we can start acting preemptively, let's say, before the problem ends, and then, the student moved on. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What is the definition of mastery in thing? Because it could also be how many questions you got right continuously, or what was the metric?
It's a probability of knowing the topic at hand, which is 6th grade ratios and 6th, 7th grade ratios and proportions in this case. So when you create an intelligent tutoring system, you can define what your units of knowledge are, and in this case, it's ratios and proportions. Some people do it at a finer grain level, some people do it at a broader grain level. For us, it's ratios and proportions, right? So it's the probability of knowing, being able to solve these problems. It's not a formula such as 3 correct, right? Because as you can see, it varies depending on what has happened, right? Before and the previous probability of mastery, right? Generally, if they solve correctly, it will go up, right? And if they solve incorrectly, it will go down. If they are disengaged, generally it stays stable, because we don't believe that is real good evidence of knowing or unknowing. They were just kind of very quickly guessing, for instance. And this is the probability after the problem ended, right? So here you solve it on first attempt, you see it went up. Here, after the student solved the problem with a hint, eventually solved correctly, but because they saw a hint, it went down a little bit. Solved correctly, it went up quite a bit, right? Okay.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you to everybody here and at home.